CoinMarketCap provides a concise summary of all that is discussed in here. Also, if you want to see more updates regarding XRP and other cryptocurrencies, please support my channel. Take a look at this situation now. Ripple has proposed that it will pay the Securities and Exchange Commission a fine of $10 million for its opposition to the XRP remedy. The United States Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) requested a variety of justifications. However, Ripple does not agree with these arguments and maintains that a fine of $10 million is appropriate. Ripple has provided a response to the motion for remedies and entry of a final judgment that was submitted by the United States Securities and Exchange Commission. Additionally, the corporation has provided a response to the request made by the SEC to disgorge prejudgment interest accruing to the amount of $876 million. Despite the fact that the SEC is requesting a civil penalty of up to $10 million, Ripple believes that this amount is insufficient. There are no allegations of carelessness or theft in the case that was brought forth by the Securities and Exchange Commission, as stated by Stuart Alder. A petition for remedies and entry of final judgment was submitted by the Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) of the United States of America. In response, Ripple Labs submitted a challenge to the proposal. This meant that Ripple Labs would not be able to pay the SEC the disgorgement amount of $876 million and the prejudgment interest amount of $198 million that was requested. On the other hand, Ripple has reached an agreement to pay a maximum charge of $10 million, which is far lower than the $876 million fine that the SEC previously stated it should have paid. Is it getting close to the end of the Ripple case in the United States Senate? The United States Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) provided arguments and sanctions that Ripple did not agree with at its briefing on April 22 regarding remedies linked to the situation. The reason for this was because the court determined that Ripple had violated Section 5 of the Securities Act of 1933 by providing XRP to institutional investors, and the company consented to pay civil fines as a direct result of this finding. These are the three grounds that the Securities and Exchange Commission has not been able to establish that there is a likelihood of future violations and that Ripple has intentionally ignored the law and its institutional sales. Ripple president has not been able to show any of these things. Due to the fact that the SEC is unable to demonstrate that money was lost, disgorgement is not permitted in this scenario. Additionally, Ripple's legal business costs can be deducted from any profits that accrue. Following the receipt of instructions from the court, the limit for the civil penalty should not exceed $10 million. Ripple informed the court that the firm has modified the manner in which it sells XRP, the manner in which it obtains rights to sell XRP outside of the United States, and the manner in which it prepares its contracts in order to prevent any potential issues from occurring. Nevertheless, Ripple did not agree with the SEC's recommendations for adjustments, which they considered to be an example of regulatory overreach. They believed that it was an example of regulatory overreach to issue an injection simply because it was possible that Ripple will break the law in the future. Ripple, in addition to submitting their opposing brief, also submitted supporting declarations and documents that demonstrated that they were adhering to all of the rules and that they had permissions to sell XRP in other locations. On May 6, the Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) set to submit its rebuttal brief under seal. Please take note that the deadline for parties and third parties to make letter motions and oppositions regarding sealing details in the filings is the 20th of May. The Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) is requesting a final judgment against Ripple, which would require the company to pay $876 million in civil penalties and $198 million in prejudgment interest plus $876 million in restitution payments. According to Stuart Alder, the SEC case did not contain any charges or judgments of recklessness or fraud. This is despite the fact that he is still confident that Judge Torres would carry out this final phase of the remedy and make a decision that is fair. It is now common knowledge that we are opposed to the Securities and Exchange Commission's (SEC) proposal for a fine of $2 billion for previous institutional sales. This is in reference to a case that did not involve any allegations or judgments of recklessness or fraud, and in which Ripple ultimately prevailed on significant grounds. The request made by the SEC is merely another evidence that it is carrying on with its efforts to terrify the whole crypto industry in the United States. According to him, Ripple Labs has stated that they do not agree with the idea made by SEC that the firm should be punished around $2 billion and that they believe the corporation should only be penalized $10 million for their acts. He stated this immediately in response to the suggestion. The United States Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) has proposed to seek a judge in New York to impose a sanction on the business that is responsible for the cryptocurrency known as Ripple Lab. On Monday, the objection to the blockchain network known as the XRP ledger was submitted. According to the petition, the court ought to reject the demands for disgorgement and prejudgment interest that have been submitted by the Securities and Exchange Commission and instead impose a civil penalty of no more than $10 million. The fines and fees that Ripple Labs was had to pay totaled $1 billion, including discouragement fees amounting to $876,000. As part of its proposal, the Securities and Exchange Commission suggested imposing a fine of $198 million in addition to civil penalties of $876 million each. It was determined by the court that the SEC's assertions that selling XRP on exchanges and using algorithms were similarly illegal were not true. In spite of the fact that the court had already determined that Ripple had violated federal securities laws by selling the cryptocurrency to institutions in the first place, this was the outcome. The fact that it appeared to have won the lawsuit in its entirety and displayed reckless behavior, not a single one of these items has been carried out. A separate penalty that is greater than 20 times the amount that the government agency has recovered from any other defendant or respondent in a digital asset case is also being requested by the government agency. Additionally, the government agency is requesting a fine that is in violation of the regulations of both the Supreme Court and the Circuit Court of Appeals respectively. Also, the corporation stated that it did not have any victories to report, which was another concern. The money that Ripple received from institutional sales income taxes that it paid and the losses that it incurred in the XRP case were not included in this line. The Securities and Exchange Commission of the United States of America submitted a request for enforcement of remedies and entry of final judgment. Ripple, a business that specializes in financial technology, proposed a maximum payment of only $10 million in response to the federal agency's demand for fines totaling more than $2 billion. Ripple's objection paper, which is 186 pages long and was sent late on Monday evening, provides a summary of the company's objections against the request. Ripple begins by noting that it has committed the violation, reiterating that it is in agreement with the decision given by the court and providing specifics of the modifications that it has taken in order to conform to the regulations. Ripple has formally acknowledged the ruling of the court, and the firm is following through with it once more in order to circumvent the issues that were brought to the attention of the court. The company has altered the manner in which it sells XRP and the way in which its contracts operate. The advertisements in the newspaper. This is a very significant admission because it lays the groundwork for the company's contention that more severe sanctions, such as an injunction, are not required in accordance with the Circuit Court's decision.